Fixable. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, thank you everyone for joining this evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission. This is a meeting of the Council held in public. It is not a public meeting. There is no fire drill planned, so if the alarm sounds, please leave by the exit nearest the large screen at the front of the room and proceed down the fire exit to the courtyard. Once it is safe to return, councillors will receive a text message. Officers will also advise when it is safe to return to the meeting. We are recording the meeting this evening using our webcasting system. The webcast will be transmitted live and will also be available on the Council's website following the meeting. All mobile devices should be set to off or set to silent so the meeting is not interrupted by ringtones. We don't have anyone in the public gallery, so I won't read out the notices for that. So we'll go straight to our agenda. Item 1, any apologies for absence? Looks like we're all here. So we can mark that off. And number 2, declarations of interest. Councillor Smith.
Just the usual one with County Council.
Okay, county member accepted. Lovely, thank you. Item 3, approval of the minutes for the meeting held on Tuesday 30th of January 2024. Are they a true and proper record for those of you that were present? All agreed? Okay, no abstentions. Thank you very much. Okay, and that takes us on to item 4, which is our 2023-24 quarter 4 overview report for the Fit for Purpose theme. Mr. Young.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillors, if I could ask you to turn to page 18 of your agenda pack. We'll start, as usual, with an update as the main projects and programmes under your remit. Chair, with your approval, I propose to take a couple at a time and then just pause if members have got questions, and I'll move on to the next couple and so on. So the first one on page 18 is Case Management Phase 1. Members will recall this is our system and process update for compliments, complaints, FOIs, subject access requests, etc. Chair, I'm pleased to report that we are nearing the completion of Phase 1. At an officer level, we have got a closure report to complete, and then when we go into the next municipal year of Scrutiny Committee, this programme will probably come off your highlight report and be replaced by Case Management Phase 2, which will then move on to the next bundle of services across the council that can be improved. On page 19, you've got the relevant performance indicators that relate to case management, including FOIs and complaints. Perhaps we'll come back to those in just a moment. On page 20 is the update around member inquiries. We've discussed this a few times at the Commission, and I'm very grateful for members' support in terms of piloting some of the features that we've been working on. Those pilots are now complete. We are again ready to roll out this particular phase of member inquiries. And then on page 21, you've got some of the performance indicators that relate to the number of member inquiries received and the turnaround time for providing a response. So, Chair, there's the first couple of projects. I intend to pause there just for a moment if members have got questions about those before we move on to the next couple.
No questions from me, but I do just want to say I think it's good, looking at the members' inquiries, that we've got round about the same percentage being responded to within 10 working days as we had back in November, but we've nearly doubled the number of inquiries coming through. So that's clear that the system is improving. It's not perfect yet by any means, but it is an improvement. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think a lot of this is still the waste problem. Residents, particularly old people, who've got an hour's free phone call, and after the hour, if they don't hang up, they get charged for the call. And like I had a gentleman, if officers are listening, it's top end of Mistley side on the even numbers. A mattress, this gentleman's tried to ring it in 3 times. No joy, he's phoned me on each time. This has been a fortnight plus, and that dump mattress is still there, for example. And residents are unable to get through, so they pull their counsellor up to say, I can't afford to just sit here forever and ever. And it's like, fine, give me the details, and I will send an email. Now, if residents' calls were picked up in a timely fashion, they wouldn't be. I've got no problem with it, but they wouldn't be approaching a counsellor to say, "Look, can you report that?" Yeah. And secondly, is still the problems with the waste. There are people still dumping black sacks all over the place. I can see some members nodding along, and I know they're doing their bit, but the fact of the matter is, people are dumping the junk. They approach their councillor, because again, if you ring up the 5 and all the 3s, you might as well phone up Mystic Meg for an answer, because you get the same reply. And I think that's a lot to do with these council inquiries numbers. I mean, before the bin changes, what was it typically? Housing repairs, or just general questions we got off the public. So I think that needs looking at. If you really want to get their numbers in line, you know, one, make sure when people ring up, the phone is picked up in a timely fashion, and two, where we've got these hot spots, I know we've had Councillor Blake say we've got the camera up, but one hot spot I've asked a colleague of Councillor Tearson to relay to him, near I parked my car, there's Blakey's camera, CCTV camera ain't there. And it needs it there. There's like, what, 40 black sacks dumped there. So these are the little things, but that's what brings your numbers up. People just can't get the rubbish cleared. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I didn't detect a question for the officers there, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. So obviously, those comments, that feedback, are more directed to the relevant service area. But yeah, I agree. Obviously, any time when there's an issue with a service, we're going to see an increase in contact numbers. But yeah, just going back to my point, the fact that the percentage of those inquiries being handled in good time is not deteriorating despite the increase of inquiries coming through is a positive step. Councillor Gascoigne.
Yeah, so I actually have a question for officers. Forgive me. So there's a gap obviously between the year-to-date 70% and the year-to-date target 80%. So my question is, why is there that gap? And what I mean by that is what is left to be done to continue to improve the service? Thank you.
I think obviously we've spoken before about some of the initiatives we're building into the case management and member inquiry service. They need to roll out and be embedded. I think again it leads through to almost what we were talking about earlier. It is a complex situation. It is about resourcing too, and I think we need to recognise we have enough resources to a certain number, and when they go up, performance will dip, and when the numbers get down again, it will go up again. So I think it's really a mixture of the amount of resource we have. We haven't got resources we can just sort of pull on indefinitely. So we have resources at a certain level. When it goes up, we need to address those underlying problems, and we have those other initiatives we've spoken about before we are rolling out to try and improve the streamline efficiency of that service as well. So it's sort of multifaceted, really.
Councillor Yacoub.
Thank you. Just picking up on the beta testing, it says that the testing has now commenced and that obviously we're seeking more members to volunteer. How many members have had this testing take place and for what period of time?
So what the report's referring to at that point is we want to switch out on your member profile page. You've got a connection to an email. We want to switch that out with a structured form. So far we have got one member who has started to take part in that test. We would very much like to swell those numbers and have a few more members. If any of the members of this commission or colleagues of yours wanted to trial it, we would show you what the form does. It still presents to you as an email. In fact, the only difference that you would see is that your email would be more structured. It would have the same layout each time. Resident name, nature of query, time for response, etc. So, Chair, through yourself, I'd just repeat the request that if any member does want to take part in that, I think the more beta testing we can do on it before we go live would be good. We were hoping to try and roll that out in the new municipal year to all members. So that would be helpful. Thank you.
I'll tell you in May. Okay, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. Just want to look at the number of members' inquiries responded to within 10 working days. For an example, I have you put a request in and 10 working days later, which is usually 14 days because of weekends, you get a response. And what I'm talking about is the other 28% that is missing, because it comes back and it says, sorry, we haven't got to the bottom of this yet, and there's another 10 working days until you receive a response, yeah? And that's, your heart drops, you know, you think, I've kept this resident on the line hanging for 2 weeks, and now I've got to go another 2 weeks before I'm going to get a response. Surely that should be less than another 10 working days, because if they're working on that response and 10 days have passed, couldn't that response be another 5 working days instead, within, you know, a total of 3 weeks rather than 2, rather than having to wait and get a response almost a month later after you've put the request in? That's my issue, and I've had that a few times in the last couple of months, and you just think, why is this taking so long? And why have I got to wait a month? And, you know, by that time I received 4 more emails from the resident asking for an update. And it's, you know, it's demoralising. So I wondered if you got a response to that.
Just to back that up, actually, I've had exactly the same problem today. I'm now on to like my second holding message, second set of 10 working days. So yeah, how we're going to improve that. And also, it might be interesting to see on these KPIs an average number of days to resolve an issue. So it's good that obviously we've got the percentage that are within the planned number of days, but maybe we find out exactly, because some are being dragged on forever. So you know, if there's some service areas are taking longer than others, that would be good to know as well. Maybe a breakdown by service area. The time it's taking for issues to be resolved.
Yeah, it's just in addition to the same thing. So, because in the business world, there's a rationale that you handle a task once, you don't have to handle it several times. So doesn't that prolong the process of dealing with the task if you have to leave it for 10 days or even 5 days before coming back to it? Because you then, the whole process of having to think about what the task is and go through that, it's like doing it from scratch again.
Thank you, councillors. I would say we completely take that on board, and the way that we land this with the organisation is that we should be responding at the earliest point, so we shouldn't be waiting for the end of 10 days, and when we extend, we ask services of when they think they're going to be able to deliver that response in. Some of the responses are complex, or where we've got maybe not so much complex responses, there can be really high demand areas, and we will push to try and get you the best response we can. So we're doing lots around quality check-in. Your point, Chair, in terms of the, you know, can we break down services? Next year we are going to be bringing back as soon as we can start to have that data around services. So where are those issues? Are they related to more complex service areas, or actually is there some performance issues that we'll start to address within those areas? And that issue around double handling, some of the inquiries do have to be double handled, or multiple services have to respond. They tend to be the ones that are more complex or delayed, or if we're working with contractors. But now we're getting through this period of stabilisation, we've put in the new improvements, we are going to start to quality check and identify why the delays are happening. And I think that average number of days to resolve, we can absolutely bring that back in the next report.
Okay, that's great. Councillor Turson.
Looking at the figures that have dropped regarding the 10 working days, would it be fair to say also that would probably depend on how many complex cases you get during that month? I mean, I received one today and it's 5 pages response, which is a lot longer than the usual couple of paragraphs. So I just wondered whether that would sometimes also add on to that, which probably follows on to what you've just said yourself anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Absolutely. More complex issues, or if something gets a high demand area, so things like if there's been a couple of storms within a week, we see quite high demand coming, and then it's about demand management and being able to resolve to those. But the more complex cases, you'll hopefully start to see when we can tag them to say maybe legal response or if there's an area that's got, you know, legislation requirement or policy, we will try to bring back a bit more insight, but we need to embed this system before we can start to bring back that insight.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just two little questions. One is, as a county member, if someone emails me at my county email address, I send it to council inquiries, but the reply comes to my Basildon account. So I have to have a bit of a good memory. I'm sitting there going, here, this lady's kitchen. She emailed my Essex account. So I have to ping it there or search my inboxes. Why do you do that with county members? I mean, say for example, Stephen Metcalfe was the MP and a borough councillor, and he sent an email from his parliamentary account. You wouldn't be sending it to a borough account if you had one. So that's what I'm saying to you. If someone's emailed from a county councillor's account to council inquiries, the reply should be going straight back to that county councillor's email account rather than a borough account, because you have to play detective to work out which account did you send that email from, so you can find that resident and send them on the reply. Second thing is it possible at all to name the names of the 3 members who put in the most casework for the most recent period? That just out of interest. I've a bet with Councillor Rimmer.
I think we'll take away the question about the inward bound from the county and responding back to the Basildon account. As a general answer, we will try and email you on your Basildon account email addresses, because that is our secure link. We've talked about this in previous commission meetings about why we prefer to use the Basildon account, but I will look into the county issue, because that is it's a sister organisation to us. So we will check that out. We don't have a league table of member inquiries this year. As we've been explaining with this item, we're going through a significant amount of process, resource and system change this year. So we hope to recapture that position in the next municipal year.
Well, if you all take my side to start with, we'll get 50 quid out of Craig on a bet and carve it up amongst us. On a more serious note, you said there was this difference about sending a reply on to the county council. We've got these parish and town councillors in the borough, and you know they've got their own Mickey Mouse email system. What safeguards you got from them? Because if a Billericay town councillor emails about a dead cat in the road, and council inquiries gives that person a reply, they're not borough councillors. See what I'm getting at?
We will make judgments about the sensitivity of information that we release to a member of public who's asking a question. So part of the process, part of what Shannon was talking about earlier, is part of that is establishing who we are dealing with as part of the query. But given that your original query, Councillor Smith, was about Essex County Council's email address, that's the part I will go away and have a look at, because that should be a trusted site for us.
Okay, any further questions on these items? No? Okay, so looks like we're moving on to the waste strategy implementation and in-cab implementation. Just on these items, I'd like to remind members that this isn't this is an opportunity to air your casework. This is relevant to the rollout of the technology and the systems. So if you have specific issues around the waste strategy itself, the best people to speak to would be the officers in the relevant service area.
Thank you, Chair. So we're going to take a block now which relates to replacing systems. So the first one of those is, Chair, as you said, it's the waste implementation, and that is a project which is about implementing Microsoft Dynamics CRM. As the update tells you there, we have pretty much completed the first phase of that replacement CRM implementation, and we are now focusing on additional services that we can bring over from our previous customer system into the new Dynamics, and that will include things like missed bins, bulky waste, and so on and so forth. The obvious benefit being that when it's all in one system, we can analyse the data a lot better, and it gives our customer resolution colleagues an opportunity to be able to access and cross-reference queries. The next project, which goes on to page 23 in this block, is in-cab implementation. Members will recall this is a project to put digital devices in the cabs of our refuse trucks so that we can feed them real-time data about what's going on their round, be there a traffic disruption or be there a change in demand, and we can reroute them. We are in procurement for those devices, and whilst we're doing the procurement, we are spending that time improving the processes that sit behind them. Chair, I've got two more system implementations. I'll just cover off now and then pause, if I may. Housing management system is a replacement for our current system, which is provided by Civica, and that is at procurement at the moment. The highlight reports that we are in discussion with a number of providers, and therefore we are seeking an extension to our current contract with Civica, and that report is going to Cabinet on the 14th of March, so in a couple of days' time. And just lastly in this little block, legal case management system, because we've prioritised some of the other projects in this series, we've put that one on the back burner just slightly because legal are managing fine with the case management system that they have at the moment. And Chair, I'll stop there and take questions before moving on. Thank you.
Thank you. With regards to the in-cab implementation, you may not be able to answer this in complete detail, but what are the benefits of this in terms of for the expenditure? What are we anticipating there being an increase or rather a decrease in response times? Have we got any information on that as to really what the net benefits are going to be?
So there are some tangible process improvements, as Councillor Smith has just said, moving from a manually based system to a digital based system. That's one. Secondly, we will be able to reroute our vehicles whilst they're out on the rounds. If there's been an incident or an escalation of a service request that needs urgent attention, say something's been dumped, for example. And thirdly, and probably most importantly in terms of benefits, as the system is rolled out, we will be able to put onto our website live data as to where the round is up to. So if somebody thinks that they've got a missed bin, it might be that the round hasn't reached them yet. In a similar way that you can see with many online digital delivery services these days, you can see where the vehicle is up to. So in time, we will get to that space as well. So there's three tangible benefits. At least two of them should result in efficiency opportunities for the service.
Okay, but we don't have any numbers at this time that you're aware of that it's got to reduce miscollections by X%, and we don't know that yet. Okay, then that's fair enough. Okay, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's probably up your street, but as we're using the Pride teams to catch up with these, let us quote Councillor Blake, scumbags who fly tip, right? And it's always the same spots, yeah? Car park near me, Councillor Tierson, a few other places, and you can guarantee on bin day you will have X amount of black sacks, X amount of dumped junk. So if you've got this technology, those guys turn up, they pick up, they remove. You'll have a hit list very quickly of bad spots in this borough where scumbags just flight it because they can't be bothered and don't care for them and their neighbours. So potentially, is there the basis of this technology to say, right, Friday the refuse crews are doing Pitsy and Vange, we'll have that Pride team to go at this point, that point, this point, that point, rather than residents ringing up, go, oh, Councillor Tierson, you've got that dead cat and 50 black sacks cleared, or someone's magically reproduced that again, right? And then he doesn't email to council inquiries, it's all bureaucratic. So what I'm saying is, if you use this technology, you know where the problem is on a Friday when the refuse crews are in that area. So residents haven't got to contact the council, they haven't got to contact the councillor, your call teams are clear, and those guys can go around and go, where's the favourite hotspots this week? Oh, yeah, no surprise there, bang, bang, bang. And also, can I add on to that, that's information as well for the enforcement teams of these regular hotspots. So if you can use that in-cab technology, not just to clear, but to create that database of where people abuse communal areas to fly tip junk in order to make the borough look better.
I could be wrong. This might feed into the data and insights strategy as well, as sharing just for the dispatch to like the pre-planning.
I mean, I would just respond. I'd agree, Councillor Smith, in that one of the benefits of it's not just the technology, is it? It's the processes that sit behind it and the data. But if you put those things together, one of the benefits is a better insight into what's going on. And you put it a lot more eloquently than I would do. So that being able to get real time examples like that is one of the definite benefits of the move that we're making.
Councillor Yacoub.
Thank you. Looking at the waste strategy implementation, obviously we know that there's stickers that are being placed on bins. Do we know how it is verified to know that we're putting stickers on the correct bins? Because I've been told on many occasions that there are residents who are separating their food waste from their residual waste, and there hasn't been any food waste in their black sacks, yet they've found a sticker been placed on their bin and their black sacks haven't been collected, which then means that the next time their black sacks are going to be collected, it's going to be a month, which I'm sure we all agree is a very long period of time. Secondly, I'd like to pick up around enforcement, because what we've seen in recent weeks is that there's been CCTV cameras put in trees to catch fly tipping. So can we have confirmation on how many cameras have been put out, what the cost of this is, what the plan is long term? And then the last point I wanted to make was another complaint that I get a lot is where there are so many bins that are now being emptied out because they're separated in 6-7 bins. There is a tendency for the bins just to be kind of like thrown somewhere near the home rather than placed where they were found. And a lot of the times that does mean that it's in the middle of the street. So I mean, I went away on holiday for 10 days. I came back and my bin was in the middle of my street, and nobody had obviously picked it up, and it had been left there from bin day. So it is a persistent problem, and a problem that other people have mentioned as well. So yeah, some details on that would be great.
I'll just one comment on it. I think I was told that the food waste stickers that have gone out are not actually targeted. It's not somebody who's been found to have like food waste in their black sacks. It's just there to raise awareness. But I think what's happened is there has been some confusion where residents have seen that sticker and feel like they've been given a warning. It's just literally a bit of advertising on the board. I could be wrong on that, but that's what I've been involved with. Councillor Smith, you've got it.
I brought it up at the last committee. Just to kick the grey stuff, I called it the garbage Gestapo. It's been funded with £7,000 of money from County Hall plus VAT, but I've not got the price of whacking them on the bin. They've done all the bins, not just in Basildon Borough, but they've done Rochford as well. So yeah, Castle Point too. Yeah. No, it's just all over. Wow. And while we're on that subject, has Councillor Stuart Young got an update about making sure we're safeguarding staff with, we spoke about the language issue. When I approached them two staff putting out them stickers, and I asked them nicely about it, and they said they don't speak English, and I was worried about someone coming out, getting the hump and sticking one on them if they can't speak the lingo. I'm worried about their duty of care.
I'm again wary that we're probably drifting into questions that would be better targeted at the officers for the relevant service area. But if you've got comments, feel free to make.
No, I mean the comment I was going to make was, Councillor Yacoub, I've written down your queries. I'm not experienced to be able to respond to them, but I can take them away and make sure you do get a response urgently to the queries you've raised around the stickers, CCTV and tree and separate bin, the return of those with my colleagues in waste. I do understand that I think the sticker is a county-wide campaign rather than the Basildon specific thing, but I will go away and ask my colleagues in waste to come back to you on those. I'm sorry, I don't have knowledge with me tonight.
Okay, Councillor Adamuyiwa.
I'm not sure how appropriate this question is for this particular program. I just wondered what the prosecute? I mean, how many people have we prosecuted since we, in terms of enforcement? Because if there's enforcement going on, what's the data like around that?
Again, I think that would need to go to the relevant personnel. I think that's a bit service specific.
Councillor Davies.
My question's about the next page, when we're talking about the, turn the page, the HMS Civica replacement. Yeah,
HMS what? Civic that?
yeah, HMS Civica, yeah, that's
What
right.
page back was she in?
Page 24. Obviously, we've gone to the position where we're extending the contract of our current users and at a significant cost. As a scrutiny-based question, what do you think the lessons learned are from this, and how can we avoid this in future?
Thank you, Councillor Davies. So we got a report going to Cabinet on the 14th, and that report is now in the public domain. It's part 1 report, and we are seeking a 2-year extension to the current contract with the provider. We originally envisaged that we would be through the procurement process and out the other side, and that we might require a shorter period of extension. We've done 2 rounds of engagement with the market, supplier market, and through that we have learnt what the suppliers are looking for in terms of a conversation engagement with us. Those 2 rounds have cost us time that then has eaten into the contingency that we had for implementation. So what we're doing with Cabinet on Thursday is we're asking them to mitigate a risk, and the risk would be that we would not be through, we would certainly we'll be through the procurement before the current contract expires, but we might not be through the implementation. So to mitigate the risk, because it's such a business critical system, we are asking for a 2-year extension. Cabinet has got options. One of those options is to say we'll have a 1-year extension, and those options are set out in the public report that members will consider on the 14th. So I suppose the lessons learnt are that we required a longer lead-in time with market suppliers so they could engage with us and have discussions with us, because it's a significant investment for them as well as us in terms of putting together a bid for a piece of work with a lengthy implementation time attached to it. Chair, it is a business critical system, and that's why we've taken the step of going to Cabinet relatively early in the procurement process to seek an extension. So that's what I would say the lessons is that we've learnt so far.
Do you have any follow-up on that, or are you satisfied? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our next batch of items.
Okay, so we're going to move more into kind of infrastructure space now. So we've done some systems. So on page 26 of your report, please. And this next update is probably the last time you'll have this one in this format. It's green across the board. This is, we've talked about it before, this is the migration from our old hosted environments for infrastructure, racks with servers on them, to a predominantly cloud-based environment through a contract that we've had with NTT. We brought to Cabinet some time ago, asking members to note that we were moving into the last phase of our contractual relationship with NTT. Both parties are aware of that, both us and NTT, I mean. And so we are migrating the final few systems and functionality away from that provider. We are bringing a report to Cabinet, which is in part 2 of the Cabinet report on the 14th, which is in reference to one of those elements of migration. So subject to that, Chair, going through Cabinet, we will be reaching the final stages of that particular piece. On page 27 is an update on the website. We've got that as a substantive item this evening. And councillors, you've got a presentation from one of my colleagues who's just going to be showing you the direction of travel with the website. So perhaps I won't say more than that at this stage. And then on page 29, We've got the data and insight strategy that Councillor Smith was referring to earlier, and your good self, Chair. And this is the document that helps us to think through, not so much the technical parts of a system, but the data it's using, how we join those up, and how that improves the customer experience. That piece of work has delivered its policy and its strategy and its action plan, and the only reason we've got some ambers there are around us implementing that strategy and bringing some of the benefits to fruition. I'll pause there, Chair.
Okay, any questions on those items? None from me. Any other members? No? Okay. Got away with that one.
And then if I may, on page 30, Chair, we've got a little bundle that relates to more workforce issues. So we've got the workforce strategy itself. We will be bringing into the new municipal year a report for members of overview and scrutiny outlining the projects that we propose to take forward. You can see those in bullet points on page 30 in the update, and we'll be giving you more details about those so that members can scrutinise those as we take them forward. And there are some relevant performance indicators on page 31. Page 32, we've had here is a substantive item a couple of times, which is the hybrid review. Again, we're reaching the phase, Chair, where this will probably come off as a highlight report because we're into business as usual implementation with the changes that we made with the hybrid working. And then there are just two left on here, so I may as well just cover these off and then pause for questions. Cybersecurity relates, and we've had a debate here in some depth at the last meeting of the Commission, and we've a report going to Cabinet on the 14th, relates to the security of the organisation in terms of its data and its flow of its data. And then on page 34 is a regular update about their procurement pipeline, which is members of ONS keep an eye on the various procurements that are going on around the Council. And Chair, I'll pause at that point before we move on to the last couple of pages of the highlight report.
Okay, thank you. On page 31, looking at the KPIs under the workforce strategy, I see that there's been a big drop-off in Q3 in the percentage of job applications received by BAME applicants. Do we know why there would be such a... I mean, the previous two quarters were fairly consistent and were exceeding our target of 15%. And it's dropped down to 13.33. Were those previous figures inflated because we were, actively encouraging, and we're no longer doing that, or, I'm just wondering why there's such a big drop off in that figure.
Yeah, we haven't. Thank you for the question, Chair. We haven't changed the advertising arrangements or the attraction strategy, so it's been pretty much business as usual across those quarters. So we need to do a bit more digging into why there is because you're right, there is a significant change in both of those PIs. The one above it, I like to look at them in comparison. So you look at the number of applications received by BAME, and then you compare that to the number of new starters by BAME, and you can see what's going on with the process there. And there's a drop off in both of those figures. So I will need to look into those in a bit more detail, Chair. I'm happy to do that and come back to you.
Yeah, that would be good. I was just say just an interest because it is quite a noticeable drop off there. Okay, any other questions on these items? No? Okay. I think that leads us to the end of the item, doesn't it? So,
You've just got on page
please do.
36 and over onto 37, you've got the full table of performance indicators, some of which you've probably covered off as we went through, but there are other indicators there if members got any questions on those. And then that, Chair, you're right, is the end of the highlight report.
Okay, I don't see any hands, so I think that's it. That's the end of that item. Okay, so thank you very much for taking us through those. That's item 4 covered, and we're now moving on to item 5, which is our business continuity policy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just say a couple of words, and I'm going to pass over to my colleague John Henley. John is our emergency planning and business continuity advisor. So John makes sure that we are safe and that we're able to continue running our services through all sorts of adversity. And members of the Commission may remember that John has been with us before to talk about both business continuity and emergency planning. And John will tease out the subtle differences between those two as we go through. Just by way of introduction, before I hand over to John, this is a periodic report back to the Commission. You asked us to look from time to time, because this is such an important topic, at how the strategy is being implemented and whether there are any changes that are required of the Council in terms of making sure that its services continue to run. But with your indulgence, please, Chair, just hand over to John, who will take you through the detail of the report. Thank you.
Good evening all. So we're bringing this report as we have reviewed the business continuity policy. That was a scheduled review as existing policy had come to an end. And then linked to that, we're proposing moving the review period from 2 years, which it is currently, to 5 years. And that's primarily because the legislation was around the Civil Contingencies Act 2004 has been in place since 2004 and hasn't changed in that time. And the guidance around that is also relatively static as well. And then the last piece that we're proposing is the removal of the strategy. So when we first introduced the business continuity policy in 2014, we had a strategy as it was new, and we were embedding, and we were on a sort of a step change with how we did that. We reintroduced the strategy again in 2021 as we'd sort of come out the back end of COVID, and we need to reinvigorate that topic within the council. But what we'd like to do now is remove the strategy and just have a business continuity management policy, management document, and that would replace the strategy, and that would outline our approach to business continuity and how we'd maintain that.
Okay, any questions on this? Yeah, Councillor Yacoub.
Thanks. Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions. In terms of the implementation, it does say on the report that all service level business continuity plans are taken through like an alternating process, but there are also some that don't have continuity plans. So could you give an example of a service that doesn't have a business continuity plan, and how the process works in assessing those?
Yeah, so each service area is put through what's called a business impact assessment. So we work with those service areas to understand whether they've got any critical tasks, and a critical task is anything that has to be done within the first 7 days of an incident. So some services, once you work through the business impact assessment, it transpires that actually they don't have any critical tasks, so we don't produce a plan with those. So it's sort of working with them, understanding what they do and whether they've got anything that fits into that process.
In terms of the business engagement, on page 57, there is mention of putting out messages and reaching out to businesses to ensure that they also have business continuity plans in place. Can we as a council do more in this area and host workshops or provide resources to assist with business continuity efforts?
Yeah, that's certainly something that we could investigate and look at a little bit more to what we do with that. The only thing I'd say is that most businesses or organisations wouldn't naturally come to us for that advice, and they'd probably seek an expert in that field to do that. So it's something we can certainly look at, but I think it comes with that backdrop that if you were running a small business, you probably might go to an expert or an advisor or a consultancy in that field rather than coming to us for that advice.
What would you say is the sort of number or highest risk to our business continuity as a council as a whole?
So probably pre-COVID, I'd have been talking about the loss of this building because that's where everyone was based and worked. Now we'd be talking about cyber security and the risk of some sort of cyber attack on the council, because that could be pretty paralytic to how we'd operate.
Okay, because I seem to remember from previous briefings, you don't kind of war game out specific scenarios. You kind of have this overarching policy that will account for it, because you can try and predict what's going to happen, and you know that it's the thing you didn't predict that does happen. So yeah, so obviously with that being the number one risk going forward, we've already sort of discussed cyber security at some length. That all still falls within the overarching policy, or have we got specific plans in place to target, or rather to combat a cyber attack?
Yeah, so as you described there, our planning is based around 4 pillars. So we look at loss of staff, loss of IT, denial of access, and then loss of critical supplier. So it would be impossible for us to war game every single scenario, and it's much easier that if you think about disruptions, they would naturally fit into one of those 4 pillars. So a cyber attack naturally falls into that loss of IT. And then what we've done, or what we're working on at the moment, is that all service level plans are going through a tabletop exercise of loss of IT. So that's how we're kind of working through that to ensure that all of our services within those plans are fit for purpose.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thurston. Oh, Councillor Yuko.
Thank you. Can you reference any technological opportunities that we've been able to use or leverage to enhance the efficiency of continuity planning?
Not that I can think of within what we're doing in terms of how we're managing that business continuity process. So we don't use any. So some local authorities use specific software to run their business continuity process, whereas we manage that sort of on a more low-key basis, as we've got a much smaller amount of plans that we manage for that.
Sorry, could you clarify? So I didn't understand if there was a specific software or something that we use.
So I manage our business continuity programme through an Excel spreadsheet, because we've only got 22 plans, whereas if you were looking at county, they've probably got 100 or 150 plans, and the cost of that software to manage that is probably greater than the benefit it would give us.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. Do we have continuity plans in place for things like natural disasters, like flooding, etc., or is that more the purview of Essex County Council, and they work in with us as partners? You know, once every few decades, for example, there's a North Sea tidal surge. You know, that's why the Thames Barrier was built. So I just wondered whether that was part of our purview, or whether that's more of an Essex County Council issue.
Yeah, so we have 2 disciplines essentially. So we have business continuity, which is about thinking about our organisation and how we can continue to deliver our services. And then the flip side of that is emergency planning, which is the other side of my job, which is about thinking about residents and those things. So we have a number of specific plans, so flooding would be one of them. And we have those that are designed for those particular scenarios and how we'd respond within the borough.
Just on that topic, do we still participate in the Essex Resilience Forum? Is that still running?
Yeah, so we're active members within the Essex Resilience Forum. Actually, I spent all of today at meetings for that.
Oh, I only ask because I visited their website on a number of occasions, and it seems to be mostly stuff from about 5 years ago. It's not very readily updated, so I just wanted to see if that was still something that was active.
Yeah, so it's still active, and they are working on updating the website, because I think a number of people have flagged that that's a little bit dated.
Okay, great. Any other questions on this item? No? Okay, so thank you very much for that update. So we are now going to move on to item 6, which is the update on the redesign of the council's website. So I believe we're going to be joined through the magic of hybrid working.
So councillors, this is going to be a bit of a moment. We're joined remotely by Monique. Monique works in the council on a number of things, but one of the things Monique's working on at the moment is helping us to design our new website. So members of this commission before have been very interested in how residents are able to access services, including digitally. and Monique's going to run us through some slides to talk about what's happening in two phases of that build. The first is to tidy up what we got, and the second is to build the new website. Monique would have been here in person, but she's had some last-minute childcare issues, and so I hope you don't mind, but I said to Monique it was absolutely fine to join us on this occasion remotely. Plus, I do know that members enjoy discussions about the benefits of hybrid working. So this is a good example of that in practice. Thank you, Chair.
So first of all, thank you all for having me this morning. If it's okay with everybody, I will just run through all of the slides first and then wait until we get to the end for any questions, conscious of the fact that this is the first time that a full update in this fashion has been put to yourselves. So internally, branded in terms of our website as the road to the future for Basildon Council and building blocks to improving our web function. So I'm just going to take you through a little journey. So first of all, where we started at the start of this project. So pre-2018, obviously Basildon Council, like most public bodies, had a website built at a time when public sector thinking was that more is more, so to speak, as in everything needs to be on there. So until 2018, we hosted that ourselves, and in this time we moved our website out of our infrastructure, and we are now hosted by a company called Goss. So around what was said earlier with...
Monique, sorry to interrupt you, but your slides aren't showing on the screen.
They're not. I am sharing.
Do you want to unshare and share again, please?
Yes, I will do. Give me one moment.
It was all very interesting, but lacking a bit of visual impact, I think.
It's a good job I can speak really well then, hey? Is that now sharing?
Not so far, no. We're still seeing a black screen.
Right. Bear with me one moment. Are you able to see my face?
No.
Are you seeing anything from
No,
the share?
we did have you on the screen for a while, and then you
So I know exactly what's happened, and it's part of our new Teams, and it's frozen me, and therefore you can't see what I'm talking about. Is there somebody that I can, Stuart, is there somebody that I can share the presentation with and say when it's the next slide so everyone in the room can see it? Otherwise, I need to system restart, and I apologise to everybody.
Or maybe we move on to the work programme and give Monique a bit of time just to sort out her issues. That would make sense, wouldn't it? And we've also got the supplementary item of the annual report. Yes, so glad someone flagged that up. So hopefully everyone received the supplement. So Monique, while Monique's sorting out her presentation, we'll move on to, I suppose, item 6A, if you like. Which is the report that's due to go to full council on the progress of the scrutiny function. Obviously, I've written a kind of a foreword for this, but Emma, I think you're going to kind of give us the lowdown on the content, aren't you? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the annual report of the Overview and Scrutiny function. So this is for the Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission. Will present an annual report to full council, sets out the work each year of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, People Scrutiny, Place Scrutiny Committee and the Prosperity Scrutiny Committee during the 2023-24 municipal year. So if you refer to, starts on page 6 of the supplementary agenda pack, it just gives an oversight of the items that be considered by each of the scrutiny committees during the year. And then it's just asking the Commission to endorse the format and content before it goes to full council at the end of March. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, now thank you for that. Just before we sort of go into any further discussion, we have Councillor Turson and Councillor Gascoigne present, who are chairmen of the Place and People Committee. So if I'll give you an opportunity to speak if you wish to about what's been covered over the last year by your committees. Councillor Thurston.
Thank you. To be honest, I wrote a very brief summary myself before I came to the meeting tonight regarding people scrutiny, and I see it's all nicely in this pack already. So a very quick shoot through. So some of the items we've been talking about this year within the people scrutiny is the integrated care system and alliance, procedure pipeline. We did a very good debate and discussion about CCTV within the public spaces and council assets. We've looked at the council leisure contracts, had people in from Everyone Active. Large part of piece of work was done on the Pitsea Community Diagnostic Centre, which we just had a briefing, Pitsea councillors had a briefing about before this meeting. Basden Twinning came in and gave us a briefing of what they've been up to in the last year or so. The same with the Basden Billericay Wickford CVS and the Basden Community Transport. All of those said what they've been up to, how they've affected the borough with the funding they get from the council. And I think one of the last ones did was a review of the safeguarding. I would just like to place on record my thanks to the committee that I work with councillors from all parties, and of course my vice chairman. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for your efforts throughout the year. Councillor Gascoigne, anything you'd like to say with regards to the place scrutiny?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's definitely been a very busy and interesting year for us in place for sure. A few highlights. Probably the most interesting meeting was actually the petition that we received recently, looking at the weekly black bin collection, which received over 2,500 signatures. But I was very pleased that actually across all the different political groups we were able to have a civilised discussion to raise issues, raise concerns. A lot of very genuine concerns there that I think we're all experiencing, and working together to try and improve Basildon and scrutiny effectively has been a really highlight there. Okay, cool. I'm not being visited by a poltergeist, hopefully. So a few other things though, a few other I would say highlights was for example, the in-cab technology tree works retender. Looking at more efficient systems, I thought was a real great one. Looking at also how we, and very, very important to me particularly, being a Pitsea councillor, is how we do the housing repairs. Is an issue that I think is across the council, and something that we are always striving to improve the experience of residents. And actually, it's been great to see that under this administration, we've actually seen that improve. But more importantly, we're able to feed that back as a scrutiny committee and say, actually, where can we do more? Where can we do better? So those, I think, probably are the, along with some working on housing allocations, those are kind of the main highlights. Very thankful to my vice chair, Councillor Moyer, who's been really helpful. Thank you. And also for the committee as a whole and our members. Is greatly appreciated, and like I say, we work together, we look at trying to do the best of Basildon, I think, and we feed that back. That's how we get positive change.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gascoigne. Councillor Holliman, as chairman of the Prosperity Committee, was invited to attend. Unfortunately, was unable to do so this evening. Obviously, there's information in the report about the items that he's coming this year, and ideally I'd like to see more of and continue next year, whoever may be in administration in that time. There was a session hosted in Wickford that allowed the public to attend, discussing the kind of the regeneration of the Wickford and the basically it's like Wickford specific issues that were open for some scrutiny. And as I say, taking scrutiny out into the community, allowing members of the public to come in and kind of scrutinise us to a certain extent, I think was a really good thing, and I think that's something we should look to encourage and increase in the future. From my own, obviously we've been covering, we know what we've been covering here in ONS, but I'd just like to extend my thanks to members of all parties for their diligence and cooperation with the scrutiny function as a whole. As I say, we know it's not always ideal, it's not everyone's favourite system, but I do think that everyone in both ONS and in the other committees as well have generally engaged with it very, very well. So I want to thank all members who have done so. Okay, so I'll open it up for any questions. No questions on that? Yeah, Councillor Yaqub.
So, in terms of, obviously this is an overview, and that's fine. And I think, especially with the work that you've done, Councillor Wingfield, it has been a productive sessions here where we get to say what we want to say, and even if we go a little bit off topic, it's exactly. So, no problems there. One of the things that I have felt quite concerned about is the amount of exemptions we've had to call-ins, because I firmly believe that that's one of the significant functions of scrutiny, is to be able to call in decisions, especially important ones, and under the guise of it being really urgent or really commercially important, there's been a lot of decisions that are now exempt from call-in, and I would like to know what the process is in determining that, and what can we do next year to ensure that we are able to call in important things.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I 100% agree with that. I do not like exempting any decision from call-in if it doesn't really have to be. I've always said that there should always be an opportunity for members, both of the administration and of the opposition, to question, to kick the tyres on any decision before it's made. There are occasionally decisions that come to us that, through reasons of urgency and so on, there's a public interest in making sure that decision gets made in quick order, and basically to allow for a call-in can create a delay which could cause I don't want to be too specific on any particular examples, but could cause something to fail, for a key stakeholder to drop out or something like that. So we have to basically weigh up the obviously your right to scrutiny and give you an opportunity to scrutinise effectively, and also the public interest that putting this particular decision or policy at risk. But it's certainly not something I use lightly. I have had a number of exemption requests come to me in quite short spaces of time in recent weeks, and I've discussed that with Mr. Birkinshaw, okay, and said I'm not very happy about that. He has agreed that we need to do better in making sure these decisions are not rushed through, and if there's decisions to be made, we need to factor in that time, okay, to allow for that call-in to take place. Unfortunately, that hasn't always happened, and I totally agree. We need to improve that going forward, and I have discussed that with officers. And as you know, just this week, where there has been a decision that I have exempted, I arranged for a briefing for the relevant members to, prior to it going to cabinet, just to give you an opportunity to air your views and get some additional information. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I won't embarrass people because it's part 2 on Thursday night, so you have that assurance from me, but I think we all know what we're talking about. And that briefing you arranged. Now, I read that agenda. I don't need a briefing, and I don't say it from an arrogant point of view, because it's there, yeah? You can run the numbers, and you can see it's a flop. Now, I read the report Essex County Council published into why Thurrock Council went bust. And one of the key concerns there was 2. One was the inability of doing motions of no confidence. That's not a point for talking tonight. But the other key point was the effectiveness of members to be able to do proper call-ins and scrutinies. Now, I think tonight's meeting could have been better used with respect for that item and actually do some proper scrutiny work, because when ink goes on paper, I have reserves and concerns. I have written to the Chief Executive to ask for a delay to have this discussion to make sure we're getting the very best. And I appreciate your point about briefing, but as I say, I've read the report, got some background knowledge, and with respect to briefing's not the answer. The thing is to do is to put the polls on the decision making. Is what is being sold the best use for that particular asset of the council? I've written to the Chief Executive to ask to meet with him Wednesday evening. He's meeting Councillor Yacoub's leader of the opposition, and he's given me the middle finger and saying you can talk to me after that cabinet meeting when a decision is made. That is not good, and God forbid, and I have the fear it will, that decision could bankrupt this local authority. And that is not a good place to be. So I'm not staying here tonight to criticise, but I'm putting that on the record. We now run the risk of being bankrupt because we didn't allow this to be properly scrutinised, look at other options to protect the taxpayers' interest, and the Chief Executive who gives opposition members the middle finger when he's not calling the police after them.
Okay, so well, I can assure Councillor Smith that before that exemption was made, I did challenge officers quite robustly on that. So I wasn't happy at the request, and I wanted a list of very, very strong reasons why it would not be in the public interest to allow delays for calling. They did come back to me with those reasons, so I made a decision based on those. But as I say, in principle, I would like to see decisions timed in such a way in future that, if we're dealing with any kind of stakeholders, they should understand that we have a decision-making process, okay, and they need to take that into account. And so, should a particular project or whatever it might be at risk of failure, they need to know that we have a decision-making process that we need to go through as much as they do, and that needs to be factored in. Yeah, go on.
Thank you. I appreciate what you said, Mr. Chairman, but tonight I'll be having to write an email to Michael Gove and SIPFA about this situation. This should never have been allowed to happen, because before the committee system, an opposition group leader of a few member signatures was enough to ask them to come to scrutiny. But some of the constitutional changes with restoring the cabinet system, that has not been there. And if I may also, on a separate subject, I tried to call in a decision. It was saying we could call it in, and I asked it to be called in about this council's response to Thurrock's local plan. And I spoke with Paula Deary, the relevant officer. She was pleasant and helpful, but I couldn't call it in. And Thurrock Council want to build 5,000 homes up to our southern boundary, and in your ward, joining your ward in Langdon with Dunton. And the only member that's had any say is Councillor Richard Moore. If I said to him, like, where's 10 acres in Dry Street? But the two locally elected members, Councillor Brown and Councillor Robbins, have had no say. I, as the county member, no formal say. We've had to do what the public have done and gone on Thurrock Council's website. And what we should have been doing is marking Thurrock Council's cards down saying, you can't build on there. It's totally unsuitable. And with regards to Dunton, that's another opportunity scrutiny's missed off. Nipping these problems in the bud. Because, previous alliance worked very hard to save Dunton. And I'm sure you and your colleague, Councillor Emery, are glad of that. But how does Councillor Moore have the justification to go behind the democratically elected voices for Langdon Hills and Langdon Park wards and potentially stitch us up with Thurrock? That's not democratic. And I think that's what causes a lot of friction between Basildon and Billericay. And if you want to avoid that, then you have to let locally elected members, regardless of party, to have their democratic say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, on that issue, I never received a request for calling. So you're saying that was right? Okay, because normally when there has been in the past when we have had call-ins, that request comes to me. ALNs get to make a judgment. As you know, you've had a successful, well, you've had a decision called in previously, as has Councillor Yacoub. So I haven't received that, but if it never got to that stage, I'll look into that as to why that was the case. Okay. Yep. No, that's fair enough. Okay. Yep. No, and as I say, I can assure you that the matter has been noted, and I have raised it, and in future we really should be working to make sure that calling is, as I say, you know, having a big decision and then exempting it from calling should not be the default position. You know, the exemption is there for a good reason. As I say, sometimes it's in the public interest, but yeah, as I say, it should be the exemption rather than the rule. Okay, any further questions on this item? No? Okay, so there's no vote or anything required on that, it's just the report is noted. So hopefully we can now go back to our update on the design of the council's website.
Item 6 revisited. Are you able to hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Excellent. So Stuart and I have been speaking, and he is going to go through the slides to try and prevent the issues on my side happening again. I do apologise. If we can start on page 2 where we were, Stuart, if that's okay. So we were at bullet point 2. So just in terms of the context and what was spoken about earlier in terms of de-scoping from our infrastructure and our movement to NTT, the website in 2018 was one of the first de-scopes from that. So we took the infrastructure away from our organisation, and we went into a contract with Goss, who host our website. And from 2018 to date, 80% of the content, as it were at that point, hadn't been reviewed. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it was out of date or incorrect, but what it could mean is that there was duplication or it wasn't linked to a user journey. So the website for our end customers potentially was very clouded, depending on the engagement type that they were coming to us at that point. And what we found when we first did a deep dive into the web as part of the initiation of this project is that 60% of the pages at that point hadn't been looked at all by our customer base. If we could move on to the next slide, please. And what we recognise as part of that, so on the left-hand side, you've got a screenshot of the current landing page of Basildon Council's website. And what we recognise through this early engagement and deep dive into the web is that actually from an end user perspective, it can be very confusing to use our website, and therefore doesn't necessarily encourage those customers to engage. For example, the top section of the website, so we've got apply report, they're sort of quick links in for transaction types, but it only covers off 3 of those transaction types. The bottom section, so we've got a residence, business and council, and what that allows our customers sort of categorization, but it doesn't cover all of our customer scenarios. So on the right hand side in comparison is the picture of the customer types that we've identified through this project. So resident, business, tourist, employee, citizen, media, all encompassed by them being our customer types, but actually we only reflect 2 of those on the website. And then further to that, as it stands at the moment and did stand, is that, you know, once we've got you as a user type, we then say, well, you need to know what service it is you need to engage with. But actually, for a first-time user of the website or somebody that's just moved to the borough, for example, you may not necessarily know that, you know, it's council tax and benefits, for example. It might be referred to as revenues in an authority that you came from previously. So the journeys in for our customer base can be quite confusing dependent on the transaction type. Therefore, we were forcing customers to use the search bar of our website, which we know from the 60% of pages not used is that maybe that wasn't the most efficient way of surfacing the right information based on what customers were looking for on our website. If you move to the next slide, please. So through identification of that, we realised as part of this programme of works that maybe there were 2 potential phases that we need to look at. Phase 1 being auditing what we currently had understanding the information that was there and the user journeys from our end customer perspectives, and looking at small ways that we could tweak and improve that now whilst we look at a wider scale programme of works. That phase is now complete, and as part of the next slide I'll go through what we've achieved as part of that phase, and then moving into phase 2, which is applying that learning, part of that understanding, and then maximising outcomes for our customers. So as part of earlier agendas tonight, we spoke about, and I do believe it's Councillor Smith spoke about, an hour waiting on a line to get through and then going through to your councillor, but actually why wasn't the preference to engage online? It could have been the quickest transaction type, and looking to encourage that user behaviour across to digital as providing the best benefits to our customers, and also looking to support the delivery of our strategies through that. So we've got our IT strategy, digital strategy, and our customer strategy, which are all seeking better outcomes for our customers. How can we harness the hard work that's been done as part of those strategy deliveries, and making sure that the benefits are landed for our own customers and through digital capabilities for those that are able to do so. So as I said, phase 1, I talk about that's come to a closure now, but there was quite a lot achieved as part of that phase 1 deliverable. First and foremost being that organisation-wide, so there have been 77 internal staff members or officers that have been part of this project with us, and we've looked at all of our pages that were live for our customers, what that was doing, what that was delivering, and as part of that audit, we've managed to remove 63.5% of the pages that were live on our website. Now, as I said to begin with, on slide 3, I gave a screen grab of what the current landing page of the website is. A lot of the pages that were deleted were where they were a duplication or weren't part of an intended user journey. So we've massively reduced the clouding in that search function, for example, to be able to surface information quicker for customers based on their inquiry type. And that's now left us with 1,540 web pages, so that's information on a page or where there's a link to transact with us, and 602 files, so that's the things like links to our strategies, etc. Ongoing, and we've done a huge amount of work on this, is enhancing that search function directly. So each day that we get through reports about what customer search terms have been through that website, that search function, and it tells us whether a customer went on to click a web page or whether there was nothing that was relevant to them through that. So we take those search terms, and over time we're slowly improving what is returned against that. The third and fourth bullet point, so the 77 staff members I said that are engaged as part of the project, there are 2 separate training exercises that we are going through and enhancing over time. So the first one is giving formal training in that GOS system itself. So there's a back end to that, and that's where we build everything that is published to our customers online. We have increased the pool of people that are able to make changes to that. So for ad hoc changes or things that come through that are really important, we're improving our capability to be able to deliver those benefits to the customer quickly and updating that. And the second element to that is around training them on accessibility. Obviously, we understand that there can be a lot of limitations in a digital world. So, for example, naturally, if you're hard of hearing or eyesight is impaired, for example, using those online capabilities, it can be a barrier. The preference would be to come into us, have a support person assisting with that. But there are a lot of advancements in technologies out there to enable customers to do these things themselves online. And what we're doing is ensuring now that when we're creating new content or documents which we're going to publish online, that they are as accessible as possible to enable everybody to use those online services if that's their preference to do so. We've also gone through a series of categorising our content, and this is a lot of what will lead into what our vision is for that phase 2 delivery. So at the moment, we've got those different sort of access routes in, as I said. So some of it is by transaction type, some of it is by customer type, some of it is by services. What we've done is look to categorise everything into what we're defining as a service pattern. So it's more intent driven. As a user of Basildon Council Services, what is it that I intended to do online today? And we've tried to identify those different intent types, becoming our new service patterns. We've also embedded web reporting organisation-wide. I know probably in a lot of these meetings we've talked about becoming more driven by data, so actually looking at what's happening and using that to drive some of our decisions and reasoning for change. We've always had web reporting there. We've implemented as part of this programme updated insights into the web so that we've got a better holistic view actually of what's happening and understanding our user needs. But previously the insight of that was limited to a small user group, whereas now what we've done is to land that across the organisation. So hopefully as they're going through service design and change initiatives, so there's a whole programme of work of service design within the council, led by one of our officers, and what we're making sure is that that insight is also present to represent those users in that journey, and taking that into account as we're looking at change going forward. So we've spoken tonight as well with John Henley and others around data protection, particularly as we move into a digital world. People are more and more nervous around the information that's being captured on them, how that's being stored, how that's being used. And our web is our biggest shopfront. It's our most utilised access channel to the council. So what we've done is to make sure that through these changes we've audited who has access to our systems as we're coming across older style forms, for example, that may be on cloud-based. We're looking to update those with newer versions of forms so that we've got automatic data retention, for example, or we're putting in place information online that says to a customer, if you don't meet X, Y, and Z criteria, it's likely you're not going to qualify for this service. What that gives is it empowers our customers to think about whether they want to give us their personal data in applying for that. It empowers everybody all around in order to make sure that we are minimising the amount of personal data that we're capturing when there's possibilities that, or a high chance that somebody's not going to qualify for a service if it's criteria based, for example. And the last thing is updating our accessibility roadmap. So probably a lot of people aren't aware, but in terms of accessibility and online, for the last 5 years, there's been much more stringent guidelines around making your services accessible, making your content accessible, and that's now governed by central government with legislation that's in place, which in some areas we're not quite hitting those markers, and we're now ensuring that it's at the forefront and that we are working with GOS as our supplier and our internal services to make sure that we are meeting those markers and exceeding those to become as accessible as we possibly can. Next slide, please, which you did already. The other thing which was really important as part of phase one and understanding the now to identify what we want to deliver in the future is making sure that that customer voice was depicted through that. So historically, for quite some time, we haven't had active feedback mechanisms on our website. That was one of the aspects that we lost when we went to GOS hosted services, is that the feedback that we had built internally previously, we lost that capability. We didn't actually have it, and it wasn't part of the budget scope at that time to re-implement that through a supplier. But what we did through the initiation of the programme of works for the website is that we engaged and put in place a 5-month pilot with a company called Ask''em. And what they do is they enabled us to embed on every single one of our web pages options for customers to give us feedback on that. So for this 5-month period, there was, if you scroll to the base of that web page, there was like a thumbs up, thumbs down, and if you put a thumbs down telling us that you weren't able to do exactly what you wanted in that, it provided a text box in order to give us insight into what was missing on that page, or what we could have improved to make that experience better for that individual. And there was really great engagement with that. So only 164 pages were engaged with. So obviously that tells us that we've got a small pocket of pages online that our users tend to go to. They've got a preference for certain transactional areas online, which hopefully will improve in the future. But although there was only 164 pages engaged with, we had nearly 12,000 reactions to that, thumbs up or thumbs down, which represented overall 5.6% engagement for the number of users we had on the web at that time. So what that gave us insight to was, although only 15.6% of that was excellent feedback, it told us that our customers want to engage in that way, but they are seeking for us to improve that and their experiences online. Which then leads us into, yes?
Your slide, we put it up on the screen, but none of the words on it are legible, so you will have to just explain to members what's in those boxes.
In the boxes on the image that's come up.
Yes, please.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So I will take you, Stuart, maybe could you click on the link to the right that says the future of the web Basildon and tell me if you're then able to read that.
No, it won't take us there, Mon.
Are you all right if I take over the screen and then hopefully you'll be able to see it more? Is that okay?
Yep.
Sorry, bear with. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, we can see it now.
Are you able to read the boxes better, or is it still not legible?
It's just.
That's fine.
Legible, I think.
It's all right. I'll go through it anyway. That's not a problem at all. So I'm going to take you across to that webpage as part of this anyway. So as phase 2, when we're looking to maximise and improve these user experiences, what the learning that we've got and what we're proposing is therefore, instead of delivering our web more as an internal council structure, so at the moment, you know, we define that by services, council tax, waste and recycling, etc. We want that to become intent driven. As a customer, what did I come to your website to achieve today? And what you've got, and this is an imprint of, is just a mock-up, very brief mock-up of a web page of what the web could be for our customers. So these are what we would call customer intents, or internally what we would look to deliver as our service patterns. So these are repeated intents, which are we've found to be present across the whole breadth of council services, whether that be the business section, the council section, resident section, and other sections which maybe aren't so distinctly represented in that in the moment. So we have, through our define and our phase 1, we have come up with 11 intents, service patterns, which we believe is all encompassing of the services that we provide to our user base. So those being that customer looks to book something, apply for something with us, report an issue, appeal or review a decision, request something from us. So the difference with request and apply, for example, is that apply in definition, and will be defined more when we look to deliver this, is that when you apply for something, it is means tested. So you might apply for a council house. As part of that process, do you meet the policy around that? Do you, once you've done that, where are you categorised within a waiting list, etc.? Request is just, it's a cut and dry. You request a new bin from us, we will deliver that for you. That case is closed. Looking to pay for something, want to check something, so that's more around capability that isn't there online at the moment. So that might be, I want to check how much is owing on my council tax, I want to check where I am on that housing register, I want to check what council tax band my property is. Informing and updating, so that's more around the data protection element. It might be, you know, you've moved property, for example, or you've changed a contact number and you need to inform us of that, and you want us to update that across the breadth of our services. In a future model, you would be able to do that in a single location. renewing something with us, again, might be very small, but for example, you might be a business operating, you might want to renew a taxi licensing with us, or any of those other licensing models. It might be as part of the waste services, you want to renew a garden waste subscription. But again, that same renewal type that we will look to standardise in the future should be a consistent way of doing that with us as a council, as opposed to dependent on the service that you're looking to engage with. Get involved. So across the council, we've got a lot of groups or forums that are out there. It might be that you're looking to become a litter picker in the area, but that's another intent type with us, and then access information being encompassing of all else, and that would be more around what is currently represented on the Basildon Council website under the council services. So access and information is more around our legal or legislative elements. Now, it might be as we look to, as we're sort of fine-tuning this further, that actually we identify a range of things that aren't fully represented through these, and that is part of the finalisation of this scoping and working across the breadth of the organisation to understand what's going on there. But what would happen is, in a future model, as we envision it, is that you would turn up on our council website with an intent to do something. You would choose which one is relevant to yourself, and then in selecting that, you're then given the options available under booking, with a future vision being that as we look to pull to sort of expand within our ICT strategy, we've got more services, for example, within our Microsoft Dynamics new platform, moving towards a single view of our customer, that you would have a consistency in the way that you engage with all of these, that your application form would look the same, that the information up front, whilst it would have different information, it would be familiar because it becomes standardized over time. And each of these would then represent a different link to go and do that sort of thing. But for example, in this small booking, and although we've only got sort of 7 things identified within that, that covers 5 council services. So if as a customer I came here and I had textiles that I wanted to collect and a bulky waste, I could do that in a single location. Or it might be that in my business life, I drive a taxi and I need to renew that, but I also need to do something to do with planning services because I'm, expanding something on my house, for example. It becomes more familiar to our user base over time. And now I've lost the page to be able to move myself on, so bear with. And the premise behind this and what we're calling our service patterns is that internally we deliver building blocks which enable sort of the connection of customers to our functions and functions to our staff, and then that loop goes back to our customers so that there's familiarity and they get updates in a consistent way, and it improves the experience over time. In improving the experience, it increases the propensity for customers to want to engage in that way, which will help to improve reliance on phone services, for example, or emails, which are admin wise a much heavier pull on time and resource, but don't always give customers the best outcome because it takes longer for us to answer a phone, for example. If they can track online themselves and be notified instantly that that's been received by us, they've got that assurance in that instance. So in terms of this, we've defined an approach that we believe is the best way that we would look to deliver this. So in each of those patterns, rather than looking at a service and saying that, you've got a bit that goes in 5 of those and we'll deliver those first, what we would look to do is deliver a whole service pattern in its entirety. So if, for example, we did do that book one, for example, we would work with those 5 different services, we would understand what's going on with those, and we would look to build each of those elements, get it right, and then deliver that in one hit to our end customers. So that we, when it comes to taking the feedback on that, it's expansive. If we only look to deliver part of that, we're going to get negative feedback from customers saying, well, I needed to book this and it wasn't present, therefore this doesn't work for us. So we need to make sure that we deliver something as a whole as best that we can do. In looking to identify in what order we're going to do it, we will look to prioritise that, and the next slide will go through how we're looking to prioritise that, which obviously is open to feedback. But that we believe at this point is the best approach to be able to do that. Where we're able to do so, everything within that service pattern that we're looking to deliver as a whole will be delivered in a digital way. There will always need to be options around alternatives to that. We understand that not everybody can transact in a digital way, or if things are only digital, then the support mechanisms would need to be there in enabling or upskilling customers to be able to transact in that way. In releasing something live, we would release it as what we know and refer to as beta. So it's not a finished product. We are looking to take on board feedback. We're looking to improve that. And until such time that we are satisfied that we have met that to the best of our ability, it will only be moved into sort of live alpha at that point. We'll ensure that there's feedback mechanisms in place. So whether that be similar to that Aspen product or feedback that we are able to enable ourselves online, it's really important that we capture that. There is no point delivering something new if it doesn't meet the needs of our end users. So their voice in that is going to be imperative as we expand through that programme of works. And then finally, when we get to the very end of that and anything that's remaining, is to really look and understand and have conversations around, do we actually really need this? I think that there has been so much online that has been put there, and there's always going to be a nervousness to take that away. But actually, if it's not needed in that capacity, it will provide better outcomes to our users in not having it there, because it doesn't cloud the information that they do need. So I said a moment ago that we, around the prioritisation, so what we are working, we are in the process at the moment of working with the whole of the business around this, is that we've categorised all of those 1,500 odd pages into one of these service patterns as we believe it to be at this time. And what we're doing is capturing data around that. How many interaction types are there of that? How do those come in at the moment? What percentage are by phone? What percentage by email? Is it digitally enabled, etc.? And through that, and once we've got all of that information, which we are hoping to have finalised across the next couple of months, is that we will understand where the biggest impacts are to our customers, and also which ones make sense in terms of our capabilities at the moment to deliver first, to provide the most benefit at this time. So on these cards, which we're working through, what we've defined is what this actual pattern does. So if the intent is to apply, we've defined to the business what this should mean to the customer, which we have asked for feedback on, because we may not have got it right and we want to make sure that we do. We've defined what this needs to enable from the customer perspective. So for applying, it would need to check ID if it's relevant to that application type. It would need to tell the customer upfront what the qualifying criteria is. That gives them, puts the power back in their hands about what we said earlier with, do I actually want to give my personal data if I'm not likely to receive this service? It needs to enable us to capture digitally information to support the progress of that application. It needs them to provide a signature if, again, it's required as part of that application process and informed of the progress. And then the other elements here are the data that we're looking to capture as part of that in order to prioritise it, which will be presented back as part of any board to say, have we got this right? Is there anything that we've missed as part of this process? So that is what we believe is the correct approach in order to provide the real benefits to the customers and make it better and a preference to transact online, and the approach we're looking to take. In order to get to that phase, there are certain milestones that we need to get. So the end result being that we need to bring a full business case back to board and in front of the right arena to decide a lot of elements around this. So we know the approach, but what is the platform that is best to deliver this on? Is it that we want to continue rebuilding it in Goss, who we're currently hosting in? Do we want to bring that back in-house because we've got more flexibility and capability around that? And as we capture this information and find out more around it, I think a lot of those answers will become clearer. But it needs to be options-led, because there's going to be a procurement, a resource, a cost element to it that we need to look holistically on in terms of the benefits to the customer, the benefits to the organisation, and how we can maximise from other work that's going on as part of other programme deliveries across the council. So the timelines that we're currently looking at as part of these milestones, and I mentioned very briefly earlier around accessibility, and that's legislation led. And we have, as an organisation, we have to meet what's classed as AA under Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. But there's a couple of elements that we've identified that we are not quite meeting that at the moment. And we've got a reassessment due around that in May 2024. So there will be a big drive around accessibility up until May, and in conjunction with that we will continue to work with the organisation to get the data and the insights that we need in order to flesh out all of the prioritisation cards on the service pattern. So we hope to finalise both of those by May 2024. And then use that information and other conversations and insight that we're having around the potential delivery platforms, etc. by July. We would hope it would come back to board prior to that, but that's worst case scenario. Obviously, knowing that there's possible pending change following elections and internal changes that are taking place at the moment, priorities might change around whether at that time as updates need to be made or resources pushed elsewhere as part of BAU activities. At the moment, our current contract with our provider GOS is due to expire in August 2024. That was procured under G-Cloud. So we, regardless of what the future model or the delivery platform looks like, there is going to be a need for us to renew that, whether that be for a year with another year's option or 2 year. The business case will help us to decide that in terms of the delivery model, etc. For example, if it was determined from that we would rebuild in the current platform, we would probably look for a longer term renewal because we'll get more favourable rates, but that depends what's happening with that. Sorry for looking through again. And then back to the accessibility, whilst we need to meet those guidelines by May, there is new legislation that comes into force from October 2024, which is more around sort of customer data capture portals, that sort of thing, which we don't have a lot of at this moment, but there are some changes or readiness that we need to ensure is there, so that we can make sure that we protect our customers as part of their online journeys. That is where we currently are and the thought process. And thank you for your time. I know that I went through that quite quickly. There's probably a lot of information there to sort of digest, but I'll put it back to the room for any questions that you've got at this point that I'll answer as best I can based on our current position.
Okay, thank you, Monique. That was very thorough. Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I don't know if it's possible if we can go back to the list of the intents.
Yes.
That we were looking at.
Let me go back. Bear with. So I just need to find my pages. Which one was it that you wanted to go to?
Yeah, the phase 2.
These ones, the service patterns. Yep.
So.
Oh, it's not playing ball, is it?
There
you go.
That's it. Okay, so just using if I'm a resident who's coming to the website, and I'll take an example. I know this rarely happens, but let's say I've had a miscollection of my bins.
Yep.
Okay. I would find those intents, as we call them, a little bit ambiguous. I might say, am I reporting a miscollection? Am I applying to get a miscollection? Applying to have my bin collected up? Am I requesting that? Am I checking if my bin's been collected or is due to be collected? I just think that some of these terms are a little there's a lot of overlap and it's a little bit too ambiguous. And for the occasional visitor to the website, who won't necessarily be familiar with these terms, it could be quite confusing because they'll go down one route and find that it's not what they want at all. So I think it possibly needs to be made clearer exactly what each of these intents is going to lead you to. And whether that's just a little footnote underneath each one that says that gives examples of what what that term means and where it's going to take you. I think, as I say, I think as it stands at the moment, for the uninitiated, which let's face it, most of our residents are going to be, as much as we'd love to think they kind of check our website daily for all the latest updates and so on, it's unlikely to happen. So they're maybe just going to, they maybe just visit us very occasionally, and it's almost as if they don't know the terminology, they don't kind of know what route they're going down. So I'm just wondering if that's been taken into account when you've kind of come up with these routes to for our service requests. So.
My answer would be yes, and you are completely correct. So the format that it's presented to you for the purpose of this update is in its most basic form. Just to give an insight or a mock-up of what this could look like. There would definitely need to be explanations within that, whether that be a hover over a box gives you the greater insight into that. But yes, they do need to do that. There is overlap between some of them, and possibly the final wording of those needs to be updated. We found that internally as we were pulling these into patterns, is that there was ambiguity and explanations needed internally as well as what was intended or meant by the framing of that. But that is all part of what would we would capture feedback on, and I think it's really important that people do 100% understand. Otherwise, again, as you said, we've implemented a change that doesn't improve things.
Yeah, and I would think that as something like this goes into beta, you'll be able to track those customer journeys and kind of see where people are hitting dead ends, going down kind of rabbit holes they don't want to, and then having to track back. So yeah, hopefully that would help inform how things would be structured. I also noted that you made some reference to we should be laying out criteria for services to allow residents to check if they're eligible for a service, and you're making that argument from a data protection standpoint. So if I understood that right, that it's kind of good data protection practice such that we should sort of say, if you're not likely to qualify for this service or for this request, you don't need to make it, because then we're gathering data for something you're never going to actually receive. Have I understood that right? That's got kind of your rationale behind it.
One of the reasons we should be notifying customers upfront anyway, and we would never block somebody from applying for a service because it's their prerogative to do so. But I think it's important to give customers sort of to know their chances of that upfront.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting anyone's blocked, but as you say, if we lay out the criteria for a service, then they can then make a decision whether they want to make that application or not, based on whether they feel that they meet that criteria.
Most services,
but at the moment, potentially they're applying in the blind, okay, and so they have maybe no chance of getting a particular service, but yet we've gathered their data through that, through that request. So we want to try and minimise that. I think that's what you're saying.
Yes, that's correct. So if someone applies and they don't qualify or that they're not eligible at the moment, the standard retention period for most services is 7 years.
Yeah.
That's obviously data that we're managing. That puts that in our remit. So if we can minimise that, it's in everybody's benefit to do so.
So we should be showing criteria for any request. Okay, that's good to know. Any other questions? Councillor Adamoiwa.
Yes, I was just thinking about because I can't see the labels from here, but if we're looking at the principles of good design, it would be to look at the language that the users are using and using that as the outer interface to the system. Even if the council wants to refer to terms in a way that they want to couch it, the user's perspective of it has to be the language that the users would want. Otherwise, we are adding a level or layers of complexity to the system, which might mean that the users will not find the system accessible, and the purpose of of the purpose of everything that we are trying to achieve might be defeated, because the whole idea is setting up the system so that users could access it and use it. You mentioned the number of pages, that's what percentage was it, 60% of pages that users weren't accessing. So usability is quite key, and it has to come from the perspective of the user, as far as I could see.
Thank you very much for those comments. And again, I do totally agree. So there is a lot we have been doing and continue to monitor, particularly around the search box on our website, which is how a lot of our customers are trying to find information, because the format at present isn't conducive to how they look to use things. And we are looking at those user terms, misspellings, all of those sorts of things in order to understand that. I think at the very top layer of the website, in terms of defining what that is, it would be quite difficult, because it will then become a lot of words on a page that it doesn't jump out at you what's there. But that secondary layer, so if you went into book, for example, we are looking to rebrand using customer language in terms of how they understand that service naming convention, as opposed to what we refer to that internally. And you know, I'd be happy to set up some form of user groups or feedback that goes on as we're doing these sort of things, as we're looking to make these changes, to make sure that the customer voice, etc., is represented, and that it's better reflected in terms of how they understand us as an organisation and the services that we provide.
Okay, Councillor Yacoub.
Thank you. So my initial thoughts on this is that if we have 63% of the website not useful and actually we're kind of reducing it and getting rid of it, would it not just be easier to start from scratch? Because that's how I would approach something like this. The other thing is, it's not clear how exactly the phased approach, what it falls under. So are we outsourcing this, or are we managing the website? How is it working? Is it an external company that's doing some of this work for us? Because I would imagine it would be easier to outsource this because of the amount of work that goes into it, and also to maybe have an expert design it. The other element is when it comes to the transaction-based actions that you've got listed there, the way that I see it is that you have a landing page where you would have these kind of transaction-based actions that people can click onto, and then once they go into it, there's a page with the information on and how they need to do what they're there to do. And then there's another aspect of the website which is more kind of like a blog, because you need a space for updates, news, articles. That might be where we have the council meeting section. Another thing to pick up on that is where we have council meetings and the agendas. Because we are now doing the webcasting on YouTube, there's no longer a link to the video of the meeting. So previously you could go through the agenda and you could go, oh, I'm interested in what Councillor Kevin Wingfield has to say. I can see he spoke. And so you can click onto that and then you can just see what you've got to say. You can't do that anymore. Not only can you not do that, you have to open a separate tab to go and look at what's going on YouTube. And it's not even embedded into the page. I think the minimum we could do is embed the YouTube video onto the page where we've got the agenda. And I think that would be useful. At the moment, I understand the kind of the idea that we have to have a very transaction-based website, and I understand the benefits of that. But I can't see how it would come together, especially with just that whole list of things. I think landing pages work really well, and we need to look into those.
Thank you. That's really insightful feedback. If I start with the second element of what you said around news and where the committees would fit into that, etc. Within that structure, the vision is that would be within the access information section, and maybe that isn't quite right. So this is, as I said, these don't have to be the finality. There are other learnings which are probably going to come out as we sort of dive further and capture that information again, and we'll work with yourselves or relevant parties in terms of framing that correctly in how constituents want to access that information and view that. I think that's really, really important. And as you say, we want this to provide an improvement and not a drawback if we want to fix known issues which are there at the moment. So, that feedback is actually really insightful. In terms of the first element that you said, so starting from scratch is exactly what we're intending to do as part of this. So through delivery of the different service patterns, we will look to provide the digital transactional element, but as part of that we will also be reviewing any information that was there, what doesn't need to be there, does it need to be at that part of the journey. The website at the moment is a complete mind dump of absolutely everything, and actually a lot of the information that's on there doesn't need to be seen by all customers. Some of it only needs to be seen by customers if they apply for something and they get to the third stage of a process, for example. And it's about managing that message and providing the right information at the right point as part of a user journey. The second part of the first point that you said around outsourcing or internally, we don't know how we're going to do that at this point. That is the options that will be presented as part of that business case and the decision that's to be made. And we will look at the benefits and the drawback of all of those and what we're looking to achieve, looking to deliver in order to determine which option is then moved forward with. So that part is not known at this point.
Okay, I don't think we have any other questions. So again, thank you, Monique, for your time this evening and going through that with us. Very helpful.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, so that just takes us on to our final item, which is the work programme. Emma.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the final scheduled meeting of the Ovian Scrutiny Commission for the municipal year. This report provides details of the items remaining on the work programme to be carried forward. I just refer members to page 62, which just lists the items scheduled to go forward to the next municipal year. The report is just asking members to note and endorse the items currently identified to carry forward and consider any further items that need to be added, and also note the Cabinet Forward Plan detailed at enclosure number 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, obviously the items that we have, things like the performance report, they're kind of recurring items anyway. Are there any items that we would like to put on the work programme going forward? No? You're all content with things as they stand? Well, fair enough. Okay, so I presume everyone is content. So that is the end of the meeting. So thank you everyone for joining this evening. Thank you for your cooperation throughout the year. And happy Christmas indeed.
Thank you to the Chair and Vice Chair for their excellent work.
Thank you very much. I'm